The morning started like any other Tuesday on Earth. People went to work, children went to school, and coffee shops served overpriced lattes. Then the ships appeared. 500 alien warships emerged from hyperspace just beyond the moon's orbit. Each ship was the size of a small city, covered in weapons that glowed with strange purple energy. They arranged themselves in perfect formation, blocking out stars like a metal curtain across the sky. Commander Zarthok stood on the bridge of the lead ship, his 4 arms crossed behind his back. His species, the Craxians, had conquered 1,000 worlds. Earth would be number 1001. The blue planet below looked so small, so fragile. Its inhabitants had barely managed to land on their own moon a few times. They still fought wars with chemical explosives and metal projectiles. Primitive. Open all communication channels, Zarthok ordered. His voice sounded like grinding stone. Let them hear our message clearly. The communication officer, a younger Craxian with bright green scales, touched several holographic controls. All Earth frequencies open, Commander. Zarthok stepped forward. People of Earth, I am Commander Zarthok of the Craxian hegemony. Your planet now belongs to us. You have 1 Earth rotation to surrender unconditionally. Any resistance will result in the complete destruction of your species. That is all. He cut the transmission and turned to his officers. Begin scanning their defenses. I want to know every missile silo, every military base, every patrol boat they have. Down on Earth, the message had been received loud and clear. In Geneva, the United Earth Defense Council held an emergency meeting. General Sarah Chen led the discussion, her face calm despite the situation. We need time, she said simply. Time to prepare. Prepare for what? Asked General Petrov from Russia. You saw those ships. Each one could destroy a city without breaking a sweat. I know, Chen replied, but we need 24 hours. Trust me. The other generals looked at each other. They all knew Earth's conventional weapons were useless against such advanced technology. But Chen had something in her eyes, not hope exactly, but determination. What do we tell them? Asked General Williams from the United States. The truth, Chen said. We tell them we need time to consider their terms. The message was sent back to the Craxian fleet. Commander Zarthok received it with amusement. The translator struggled with some of the human concepts, but the meaning was clear. They wanted 24 hours to think about surrender. They wanted delay, laughed Sub-Commander Veltok. As if one day would make any difference. Let them have their day, Zarthok said, waving a dismissive hand. It will give us time to fully scan their pathetic defenses. Besides, the fear will soften them. Tomorrow, they will beg us to accept their surrender. But Earth wasn't preparing to surrender. Within minutes of the alien ultimatum, every phone on the planet buzzed with the same message. Code Prometheus. This is not a drill. In a garage in Detroit, Jim Martinez read the message and immediately went to his tool cabinet. He pushed aside wrenches and screwdrivers, revealing a hidden panel. Inside was a thick manual titled Civilian Defense Protocol, Alien Invasion Scenario. Earth's governments had been preparing for this possibility for decades, ever since they detected the first signs of intelligent life in the universe. In Tokyo, Yuki Tanaka received the same message in her university laboratory. She and her fellow students immediately stopped their regular experiments and began pulling out hidden equipment from storage lockers, equipment that had been placed there years ago, waiting for this exact moment. In Mumbai, Cairo, London, São Paulo, and thousands of other locations, similar scenes played out. Factory workers received new blueprints on their tablets. Farmers found sealed instructions in their equipment sheds. Even food delivery drivers discovered emergency protocols in their vehicles. The aliens watched Earth's communication networks explode with activity. Their computers tried to translate and analyze the millions of messages flying back and forth, but it looked like pure chaos. People seemed to be panicking, sending random messages, making phone calls about groceries and dinner plans. Look at them scramble, said Veltok, like insects whose nest has been disturbed. But hidden in those millions of normal-seeming messages were coded instructions. Pick up milk meant activate phase 1. Dinner at 8 meant converge at checkpoint. Earth's governments had learned something important from their history. The best way to hide something was in plain sight. In abandoned warehouses, old equipment hummed back to life. Satellites that had been listed as defunct for years suddenly reoriented themselves. Museum ships that hadn't sailed in decades were quietly towed out of their displays and into dry docks. The Craxians' scans showed Earth's military forces on high alert, but that was expected. What they didn't notice were the thousands of civilian facilities converting to wartime production. A toy factory in China retooled its assembly lines. A car manufacturer in Germany began producing something that definitely wasn't cars. A tech company in California started mass-producing circuit boards with very specific specifications. General Chen stood in Earth's combined command center, located deep beneath the Swiss Alps. Screens covered every wall, showing feeds from around the world. She watched as humanity did what it did best: adapt. "Status report," she called out. "Industrial conversion at 40% and climbing," reported Colonel Anderson. "The factories are ahead of schedule." "Good. What about the special projects?" "Project Frequency is online. Project Shotgun is at 60%. Project Kitchen Sink." The colonel paused. "Is exactly as chaotic as planned." Chen allowed herself a small smile. Project Kitchen Sink was her favorite. The instruction to weaponize literally everything. Already reports were coming in of creative interpretations. A group of engineers in Japan had figured out how to turn subway trains into railguns. Fishermen in Norway were converting their sonar equipment into focused acoustic weapons. Someone in Texas had apparently turned a barbecue smoker into a plasma cannon, though nobody was quite sure how. "Commander," called out Lieutenant Kim from the communication station, "we're getting an interesting report from the International Space Station." "Put it on screen." The face of Captain Roberts appeared, floating in zero gravity. "General, we've completed the modifications as instructed. The station is now, well, it's not really a research station anymore." "Excellent. Maintain radio silence until the signal." "Understood. Roberts out." The Craxians continued their scans, cataloging Earth's defenses. They found exactly what they expected: nuclear weapons, conventional missiles, a few laser defense systems that were laughably primitive by their standards. Commander Zarthok reviewed the data with satisfaction. "Their strongest weapon appears to be fusion bombs with a yield of 50 megatons, reported the science officer. "Our shields could withstand 1,000 such explosions without strain." "As expected," Zarthok said. "What about their fleet?" "They have approximately 200 vessels capable of spaceflight, mostly for cargo and transportation." "No significant weapons detected," the commander nodded. This would be even easier than anticipated, but the Craxians' advanced sensors were calibrated to detect traditional weapons, energy signatures, radioactive materials, conventional explosives. They weren't designed to notice a grandmother in Scotland modifying her knitting needles with electromagnetic coils. They didn't flag the teenager in Brazil who was writing code that would turn smart home devices into a coordinated defense network. They completely missed the chef in France who was experimenting with weaponized cheese, though to be fair, nobody expected that one. As the hours passed, Earth grew quieter on the surface. Cities implemented curfews, streets emptied. To the watching aliens, it looked like a planet accepting its fate. In reality, 12 billion humans were working with a focused determination that would have terrified the Craxians if they had understood it. Every person had received instructions tailored to their skills. Doctors prepared field hospitals but also worked on biological weapons. Teachers organized evacuation plans while teaching children how to build emergency radios. Even street artists got involved, preparing special paint that would interfere with alien sensors. General Chen watched the countdown timer on the main screen. 18 hours remained. Around her, officers coordinated the largest military operation in human history. Except most of the soldiers were civilians, and most of the weapons hadn't existed 24 hours ago. "General," an aide approached with a tablet. "You need to see this." The screen showed a message from a group of hackers who had managed to partially decode the alien computer signals. They had found something interesting. The Craxian shields operated on a very specific frequency. Chen read the technical details and smiled. "Send this to Project Frequency immediately, and tell them to check if microwave ovens can be modified to match this wavelength." The aide looked confused but nodded and hurried off. As Earth's sun set over the Pacific, casting long shadows across continents, humanity prepared for war in a way no species ever had, not with grand armies or massive fleets, but with the collective ingenuity of 12 billion individuals who had just been told their planet was under threat. The Craxians had made a crucial mistake. They had judged humanity by their technology, not by their character. The countdown timer in Earth's command center showed 6 hours remaining. General Chen hadn't slept, but her eyes were sharp and focused. Around her, hundreds of officers coordinated the strangest military buildup in history. "General, we're getting reports from all sectors," Colonel Anderson announced. "You need to see this." The main screen split into dozens of smaller displays, each showing different locations around Earth. Chen walked closer, studying each feed carefully. In New York Harbor, the old USS Intrepid museum ship was being fitted with something that looked like a massive tuning fork. Electrical cables as thick as tree trunks ran from the city's power grid directly into the ship's hull. Sparks flew as welders attached strange metal plates to every surface. In the Sahara Desert, massive mirrors were being positioned in precise patterns. Each mirror was connected to motors that could adjust their angle down to the millimeter. From above, they formed a pattern that looked almost like a circuit board made of reflected sunlight. Under the Pacific Ocean, submarines were releasing unusual payloads, not torpedoes or mines, but containers filled with modified smartphones. Each phone had been reprogrammed and fitted with pressure-resistant cases. They sank to specific depths and positions, creating an underwater network spanning thousands of miles. "What's the status on Project Frequency?" Chen asked. "Better than expected," replied Dr. Harrison, the chief science advisor. "We've successfully modified approximately 2 billion devices. Microwave ovens, Wi-Fi routers, cell towers, even baby monitors. They're all synchronized and ready." Up on the Craxian flagship, Commander Zarthok reviewed his own battle plans. The conquest would follow standard hegemony protocol. First, destroy major population centers to break morale. Second, eliminate any military resistance. Third, round up survivors for processing. "Commander," the sensor operator called out, "we're detecting massive electromagnetic pulses from the planet's surface." Zarthok moved to the sensor station. The readings were strange, powerful EM signatures, but not from military installations. They were coming from everywhere. Cities, farmlands, oceans, even the polar ice caps. "Analysis?" he demanded. "Unknown, Commander. The signals don't match any known weapon signatures. They appear to be civilian in origin? Impossible. Continue monitoring." Sub-Commander Veltok approached with a concerned expression. "Perhaps we should attack now before they finish whatever they're preparing." "No," Zarthok said firmly. "We gave our word. 1 full rotation. The hegemony keeps its promises even to primitives. Besides, what could they possibly create in 24 hours that could threaten us?" Back on Earth, Maria Santos stood in her restaurant kitchen in Mexico City, reading the instructions on her phone for the 5th time. Around her, 20 other cooks were doing the same thing with their equipment. "I still can't believe we're doing this," said Carlos, her sous chef, as he connected industrial batteries to their deep fryers. "The instructions are clear," Maria replied, "adjusting the temperature controls to exactly 347 degrees Celsius. The oil, when heated to this specific temperature and charged with electricity, creates plasma bursts. But it's cooking oil. Everything is a weapon if you're creative enough," Maria said, remembering her grandfather's stories about the resistance fighters who fought with whatever they had. "Now help me aim this at 30 degrees elevation." Similar scenes played out across the world. In London, the Thames barrier had been converted into a massive electromagnetic pulse generator. Its original flood prevention motors now powered coils that could produce directed energy bursts. In Singapore, the entire port's crane system had been networked together, their magnetic lifting systems synchronized to create overlapping fields that could disrupt electronics at a distance. Even Antarctica wasn't left out. Research stations had repurposed their ice core drilling equipment, turning them into launchers for supercooled projectiles. Liquid nitrogen, usually used for scientific preservation, was being weaponized in ways that would have made the Nobel Prize Committee faint. The Craxians detected all this activity, but couldn't make sense of it. Their computers kept classifying the signatures as civilian infrastructure, not military threats. The algorithm had been trained on 1,000 conquered worlds, and none of them had ever done anything like this. "Commander," the intelligence officer reported, "we've decoded more of their communications. They appear to be discussing dinner recipes, home improvement projects, entertainment schedules. Perhaps the stress has driven them mad," Veltok suggested. Or they're using code, another officer proposed. It doesn't matter, Zarthok said. No code can create weapons from nothing. He was wrong. Every message was indeed coded, but not in the way the aliens expected. Humans weren't trying to hide their communications. They were hiding their preparations in plain sight. A recipe for spicy chicken was actually instructions for converting microwave ovens. Home improvement meant structural reinforcement of buildings to withstand recoil. Entertainment was the coordination of the massive mirror arrays being built in deserts worldwide. In Earth's command center, General Chen received a priority message from the International Space Station. Captain Roberts appeared on screen. But the background had changed dramatically. Where once there had been scientific equipment and experiments, now there were weapons. The entire station had been converted into a battle platform. General, we've completed all modifications. The station's solar panels can now focus energy into directed beams. We've turned the robotic arms into projectile launchers and... He paused. The boys in engineering did something to the waste processing system. I'm not entirely sure what, but they assure me it will be effective. Excellent work, Captain. Remember, wait for the signal. As the timer reached 3 hours, something unexpected happened. Children around the world began going outside with their parents, carrying boxes of sidewalk chalk. To the watching aliens, it looked like some sort of global art project. Children drew patterns on streets, sidewalks, parking lots, anywhere they could find flat concrete. What the Craxians didn't realize was that each pattern was precisely calculated. The chalk contained metallic particles that would react to specific frequencies, turning every decorated surface into a resonance amplifier. Even Earth's children were part of the defense. In Mumbai, Raj Patel stood on the roof of his apartment building with his neighbors. They had spent the last 20 hours converting every satellite dish in the neighborhood into a synchronized array. The instructions had been clear. Aim at specific coordinates, activate at the exact moment, and don't stop no matter what happens. You think this will work? Asked Mrs. Gupta, an elderly woman who had contributed her antique radio equipment to the cause. It has to, Raj replied, checking the connections one more time. My daughter is 5 years old. She deserves to grow up on a free Earth. The ocean preparations were perhaps the most ambitious. Every civilian ship, from cruise liners to fishing boats, had been modified. Sonar systems were converted into acoustic weapons. Navigation radar became targeting systems. Even party boats with sound systems were turned into sonic weapons platforms. Commander Zarthok stood at his command station as the deadline approached. 1 hour remained. Status of their military forces. Minimal movement, Commander. They appear to be waiting. For what? Unknown. The commander frowned. Every other species had either surrendered immediately or launched their best weapons in desperate attacks. Humans were doing neither. They were just preparing something, Commander, the sensor operator suddenly shouted. I'm detecting massive power buildups across the planet. Every major city, every power plant, they're all channeling energy into what? Everything, Commander. They're channeling power into everything. Down in Earth's command center, the final preparations were being made. General Chen stood before a console with a single red button, surrounded by her staff. All stations report ready, Colonel Anderson announced. Project Frequency is online. Project Shotgun has 10 million projectiles loaded. Project Kitchen Sink is, well, it's as ready as organized chaos can be. Chen nodded and opened a channel to every defender on Earth. People of Earth, this is General Chen. In 30 minutes, we will show these invaders what humanity is capable of. Remember your training. Trust in each other. And whatever happens, don't stop fighting. Every one of you is Earth's defender today. The message was also transmitted to the Craxian fleet, but in their language, it translated roughly to, Earth's food preparation specialist speaks to all. In small-time unit, we will share our recipes with visitors. Remember your seasoning. Trust in flavor. Continue cooking. The translation algorithm was having a very bad day. 20 minutes remained. In orbit, the moon bases that had been thought decommissioned years ago powered up. Mining equipment designed to extract minerals had been converted into mass drivers. Tons of lunar rock were being loaded into electromagnetic launching systems. 15 minutes. Every nuclear power plant on Earth was running at maximum capacity, pushing power into the global grid. Cities that had never worked together were now connected, sharing energy across continents. 10 minutes. The mirrors in the deserts began to adjust, focusing sunlight into concentrated beams. The moment General Chen pressed the button, Earth erupted. It wasn't an explosion in the traditional sense. It was 12 billion individual acts of defiance happening simultaneously, a symphony of chaos conducted with the precision of a Swiss watch. Every microwave oven on the planet pulsed in unison. 2 billion of them, all modified to emit the exact frequency that the hackers had discovered. The waves penetrated the Craxian shields like they weren't even there, causing the alien hull plating to vibrate at a resonance that turned them into massive inductors. The ship's own electrical systems began feeding back on themselves. Commander Zarthok stumbled as his flagship shuddered. "What's happening?" "Unknown energy pattern, Commander. Our shields aren't stopping it." From the oceans, thousands of submarines and ships launched their attacks. Not torpedoes, but compressed garbage. Literal garbage. Plastic bottles, aluminum cans, old electronics, all compressed into dense projectiles and fired from improvised railguns. The aliens' tactical computers crashed trying to classify the incoming objects. Was it ammunition, debris? The system couldn't decide and kept switching defense modes. "Sir, we're being hit by..." "Refuse?" Veltak reported, confused. But this wasn't just garbage. Each piece had been selected for its material properties. The plastic melted against the heated shields, creating a film that blocked sensors. The aluminum oxidized rapidly, creating chemical reactions with the shield's energy field. Old batteries exploded on impact, releasing toxic chemicals that ate through external components. From the desert mirrors came concentrated beams of sunlight, focused with the precision of laser weapons. The mirrors had been positioned using calculations from every physics student on Earth, turning the sun itself into a weapon. The beams weren't powerful enough to destroy the ships, but they were exactly the right intensity to overload optical sensors, effectively blinding entire vessels. The space station opened fire with everything Captain Roberts and his crew had built. Frozen waste, crystallized in the vacuum of space and accelerated to incredible speeds, became deadly projectiles. The station's solar panels focused energy bursts that, while weak by military standards, were tuned to interfere with Craxian navigation systems. "Captain, should we really be launching frozen poop at alien invaders?" asked Lieutenant Wang. "If it works, it works," Roberts replied, firing another volley. From lunar bases, mass drivers launched moon rocks at significant fractions of light speed. These weren't sophisticated weapons, just rocks, but when accelerated to such speeds, even pebbles became deadly. The Craxian shields, designed for energy weapons and conventional explosives, struggled with the sheer kinetic energy of simple stone. The most effective attack came from the synchronized electromagnetic pulse. Every electronic device on Earth, every phone, every laptop, every smart toaster, pulsed in sequence, creating a rolling wave of interference that swept through the alien fleet. The pulses were individually weak, but together they formed a pattern that disrupted the quantum processors the Craxians used for their computers. Maria Santos's weaponized cooking oil performed beyond expectations. Restaurants around the world fired streams of superheated electrified oil that became plasma jets upon leaving the fryers. The oil adhered to anything it touched, continuing to burn even in the vacuum of space when it reached the lower orbiting ships. In Texas, Bobby Thompson had indeed turned his barbecue smoker into a functional plasma cannon. Nobody, including Bobby, was quite sure how it worked, but it was launching balls of ionized mesquite smoke that somehow maintained cohesion over long distances. The smoke balls didn't do much damage, but they left the impacted areas smelling like brisket, which confused the Craxian chemical sensors even more. The underwater smartphone network activated its true purpose. 10,000 phones began playing the same frequency simultaneously, creating standing waves in the ocean. These waves focused at specific points, launching columns of water into the atmosphere with such force that they reached low-orbiting vessels. The salt water shorted out external systems and corroded sensitive equipment. Commander Zarthok watched his tactical display in disbelief. His fleet was under attack from every direction, but none of it made sense. The computer kept reporting, under attack by kitchen appliances, refuse, frozen biological waste, cooking oil, smoke, water, rocks, light, and unidentified resonance patterns. Return fire, he ordered. "Destroy their cities!" The Craxian weapons powered up, but something was wrong. The children's chalk patterns were activating. The metallic particles in the chalk created interference patterns that disrupted targeting systems. The weapons fired, but the shots went wide, hitting empty fields and abandoned buildings that had been evacuated hours ago. From every city came swarms of drones, not military drones but commercial ones, pizza delivery drones with small lasers attached, photography drones carrying electromagnetic pulse devices, racing drones modified to be kamikaze units, millions of them, operated by gamers who had been training for this their entire lives without knowing it. "I've got 3 kills," shouted Kevin from his bedroom in Ohio, piloting his drone with a gaming controller. "5 here," replied Lee from Seoul, her drone weaving between alien laser fire with moves perfected in countless hours of online gaming. The hackers' attack was perhaps the most devastating. They had discovered that Craxian systems used a form of quantum encryption that was theoretically unbreakable. Theoretically. But humans had learned something important from their history of warfare. If you can't break the lock, break the door. Instead of trying to decrypt the alien systems, they simply flooded them with data. Cat videos, memes, the entire collected works of Shakespeare, every song ever recorded, billions of spam emails. The Craxian computers, trying to process and classify all incoming data as potential threats, began to overheat. "Commander, our systems are being overwhelmed by imagery of small Earth mammals, and something called Never Gonna Give You Up is playing on all communication channels." The railway attacks began next. Subway trains modified into railguns launched themselves from tunnels at angles calculated to achieve escape velocity. They carried no explosives, just tons of steel moving at incredible speed. The impacts were devastating. Purely kinetic weapons that punched through shields weakened by the constant microwave bombardment. Industrial factories revealed their preparations. Car manufacturers had been building something in those 24 hours. Not weapons, but shells. Empty shells that looked like missiles but were actually filled with industrial foam. When they hit the alien ships and exploded, the foam expanded and hardened instantly, covering weapons ports, sensor arrays, and engine exhausts. It didn't destroy anything, but it effectively disabled entire sections of ships. The cruise ships and cargo vessels had turned their sonar into acoustic weapons, but with a twist. They weren't trying to damage the alien ships directly. Instead, they played specific frequencies that had been calculated to resonate with Craxian physiology. The aliens, it turned out, had evolved on a planet with very stable sound patterns. Earth's chaotic acoustic assault caused immediate disorientation and nausea. Even more effective was the discovery made by a group of teenagers in Japan. They found that Craxian communication used a form of biological quantum entanglement that could be disrupted by playing dubstep music at specific frequencies. Within minutes, every speaker on Earth was blasting bass-heavy electronic music toward the sky. "Commander," Veltuk gasped, his forearms flailing uncontrollably. "The sound patterns. They're causing involuntary muscle responses. Across the fleet, Craxian crew members were involuntarily dancing, their bodies responding to rhythms that their brains couldn't process." The bridge of the flagship looked like an alien rave, with officers trying to work their controls while their limbs moved to the beat. The kitchen sink strategy was living up to its name. Everything that could possibly be weaponized had been. Farmers were launching tractors with catapults. Swimming pools had been turned into chemical weapons by adding industrial cleaners. Someone in Florida had figured out how to weaponize hurricanes by seeding them with metallic particles that responded to electromagnetic fields. The sheer variety of attacks was overwhelming the Craxian fleet's ability to respond. Their military doctrine had prepared them for energy weapons, nuclear devices, even biological warfare. Nobody had prepared them for an attack using weaponized cheese. Yes, cheese. The French had not been idle. They had discovered that certain aged cheeses, when exposed to specific radiation frequencies, underwent a chemical reaction that produced compounds highly corrosive to the particular alloy the Craxians used in their ships. Wheels of Camembert and Roquefort, launched from modified wine presses, were eating through hull plating. "This is impossible," Zarthok shouted. "These are primitives. They don't even have faster-than-light travel." "Commander," the science officer called out, his voice shaking. "I'm detecting something else. The humans, they're boarding our ships. Finally, conventional warfare. Deploy security teams." But the boarding parties weren't what he expected. Instead of soldiers with weapons, humans were approaching in ships marked with strange symbols. As they got closer, the universal translator finally managed to decode the markings. 6 hours into the battle, Commander Zarthok made a terrible realization. The humans weren't just defending. They were learning. Every attack, every weapon, every defensive measure his fleet employed was being analyzed in real time by billions of human minds and millions of computers. The species that had barely reached their moon had turned their entire planet into a massive research and development laboratory. "Commander," the science officer reported, his voice trembling. "The humans have decoded our shield frequency. They're adjusting their attacks to match our defensive rotations." "Impossible. That encryption would take centuries to break." "They didn't break it, sir. They observed it. Apparently, something called machine learning analyzed our shield patterns from millions of impact points. They're predicting our defenses now." In Earth's command center, General Chen watched the tactical display with grim satisfaction. The alien fleet was still powerful, but humanity's unconventional assault was working. More importantly, Earth scientists were having the time of their lives. "General," Dr. Harrison rushed over, tablet in hand. "You need to see this. Remember how their ships shimmer when they move? Yes, it's not just visual. It's dimensional shifting. They're partially phasing through subspace to reduce resistance. But here's the thing. When they phase, they're vulnerable to certain quantum states, and we just figured out how to exploit it." "English." "Doctor, we can hurt them with Wi-Fi routers." Within minutes, every Wi-Fi router on Earth, billions of them, was broadcasting at a specific quantum frequency. Individual routers were harmless, but together, they created a quantum interference pattern that made dimensional shifting extremely uncomfortable for the Craxians. Like trying to phase through a space filled with invisible thumbtacks. The aliens stopped using their phase drives, which made them slower and easier to hit. But the real breakthrough came from an unlikely source. 12-year-old Amy Chen, no relation to the general in Vancouver, had been analyzing the alien communications with software she'd written for a science fair project. She noticed something everyone else had missed. "Mom," she shouted, running to her mother who was coordinating drone strikes from their living room. "The aliens are telepathic." "What? Look." Amy showed her the data. "Their verbal communication has gaps. They're filling in meaning with some kind of quantum entanglement between their brains. That's why our translation software keeps messing up. We're only getting half the conversation." This information was immediately uploaded to the Global Defense Network. Within minutes, a team of neuroscientists in Berlin had a theory, and a group of music producers in Los Angeles had a solution. They called it the Bass Drop Protocol 2.0. If the aliens communicated partially through quantum entanglement, then certain frequencies might disrupt that communication. Not just dubstep this time, but a carefully crafted combination of frequencies designed to interfere with quantum consciousness itself. Every speaker on Earth synchronized again. This time the music was different. It wasn't just bass heavy. It was mathematically calculated to create quantum interference patterns. The effect on the Craxian fleet was immediate and devastating. Commander Zarthok grabbed his head with all four arms as pain shot through his consciousness. Every Craxian in the fleet felt it. Their telepathic network was being scrambled. They couldn't share thoughts, couldn't coordinate, could barely think individually. "Make it stop," Veltak screamed, but his words came out wrong. The quantum disruption was affecting their language centers. He had tried to say "make it stop," but it came out as "purple monkey dishwasher." Across the fleet, chaos erupted. Orders became gibberish. Navigation instructions turned into poetry. Tactical commands somehow became recipes for something called banana bread. The humans pressed their advantage. Bobby Thompson's barbecue plasma cannon had inspired others. In Brazil, someone had weaponized coffee machines, creating caffeinated plasma bursts. In Italy, pizza ovens were launching molten cheese projectiles. In India, pressure cookers had been converted into something that violated at least 3 laws of physics but worked anyway. The moon bases increased their bombardment. Not just rocks now, but ice mined from lunar craters. The ice sublimated instantly when it hit the warm alien ships, creating explosive decompression that damaged external systems. Captain Roberts on the International Space Station had made another discovery. The alien ships used a form of biological technology. Parts of their vessels were actually alive. This gave them self-repair capabilities, but it also gave them vulnerabilities. "General Chen," Roberts reported, "we've been analyzing their hull composition. The biometallic compound they use, it's susceptible to certain enzymes, specifically the kind found in laundry detergent." "You're joking. I wish I was." Apparently their biometal is similar to the protein structures that make up grass stains. Industrial-strength stain remover could literally dissolve their hulls. Within the hour, every laundry facility on Earth was producing weaponized detergent. Tide Pods, which parents had spent years telling children not to eat, were being launched at alien spaceships. The irony was not lost on anyone. The boarding parties increased their efforts. The lawyers were joined by other unexpected professionals. Tax auditors began demanding to see 5 years of receipts for the invasion fleet. Health inspectors cited the ships for numerous violations, including improper food storage and inadequate bathroom facilities for a crew of that size. A group of kindergarten teachers boarded one vessel and began treating the confused alien warriors like misbehaving 5-year-olds, surprisingly effective as it turned out. The Craxians, having never encountered such patient yet firm authority, found themselves sitting in timeout corners before they realized what was happening. The hackers had moved beyond just flooding the systems with data. They had discovered the Craxian entertainment networks and were replacing all content with human media. Alien warriors trying to check tactical displays were instead getting episodes of The Great British Bake Off. The mess halls were playing Baby Shark on infinite loop. The commander's personal quarters somehow had all screens showing cat videos, but humanity's greatest weapon was about to be deployed. In Geneva, the world's particle physicists had spent the last 20 hours converting the Large Hadron Collider into something that definitely violated international safety regulations. They called it the probability cannon. "Are you sure this won't destroy the universe?" asked Dr. Yamamoto. 60% sure, replied Dr. Smith. Good enough. Fire it up. The probability cannon didn't fire projectiles or energy. It fired localized probability distortions. Around each alien ship, the laws of probability began to hiccup. Suddenly, extremely unlikely events became common. Circuits that had a 1 in a billion chance of failing all failed simultaneously. Quantum fluctuations that should never have mattered suddenly mattered very much. On one ship, every molecule of air spontaneously moved to the left side of the bridge. On another, all the electrons in the main computer decided to take a quantum vacation to another dimension. The flagship's artificial gravity reversed itself, but only for objects weighing exactly 2.7 kilograms. Commander Zarthok watched his perfect invasion force being taken apart by chaos incarnate. His species had conquered through order, discipline, and superior technology. Humans were winning through randomness, creativity, and the weaponization of everything, including the kitchen sink, which someone in Detroit had actually launched at considerable velocity. "Sir," Veltak managed to say correctly after several attempts, "the fleet is at 40% combat effectiveness. Perhaps we should retreat and regroup." "Never," Zarthok snarled. "We are the Craxian hegemony. We do not flee from primitives." But even as he spoke, he noticed something disturbing on his personal scanner. The humans weren't just using their 24 hours of preparation. They were still building new weapons. The battle itself was being used as a testing ground for increasingly bizarre innovations. A report came in from the 10th ship in formation. They were under attack by what appeared to be weaponized poetry. A human transmission was broadcasting haikus that, when translated into Craxian, created linguistic paradoxes that caused their universal translators to emit harmful frequencies. Another ship reported being assaulted by what could only be described as aggressive mathematics. Someone was transmitting equations that, when processed by their navigation computers, caused the systems to divide by 0 repeatedly. The computers were having the digital equivalent of nervous breakdowns. The 85th ship in the fleet sent a distress signal. They were being boarded by a single human in a vehicle called a food truck. The human was somehow defeating their security forces with nothing but a spatula and what he called the special sauce. Nobody wanted to know what was in the special sauce, Commander. The chief engineer called out, "I'm detecting something approaching from Earth. I don't know what it is." On the main screen appeared something that defied description. It looked like someone had duct taped together a roller coaster, a cathedral organ, and a nuclear reactor, then strapped rockets to it. It was spinning, playing music, and somehow moving faster than physics should allow. What in the name of the hegemony is that? The mood in Earth's command center changed the moment they decoded the Craxian logs. General Chen read the translations with growing horror and rage. 1,000 worlds conquered, Billions of sentient beings enslaved. Entire species wiped out because they couldn't meet quotas. They're not conquerors, Dr. Harrison said quietly. They're genocidal bullies. Chen turned to her staff. Send this information to everyone. Every human needs to know what we're really fighting. Within minutes, the data was transmitted globally. 12 billion humans learned that they weren't just defending Earth. They were potentially the galaxy's last hope against tyranny. The change in humanity's response was immediate and terrifying. Before, humans had been creative and chaotic. Now they were focused, determined, and absolutely furious. The gloves didn't just come off. They were set on fire and thrown at the enemy. In Silicon Valley, tech companies stopped competing and started collaborating. Within 2 hours, they had created a virus specifically designed to target Craxian systems. It didn't just corrupt data. It replaced every piece of text with variations of "go home" in every language humans knew. And several they had just made up for the occasion. Commander Zarthok noticed the shift immediately. The attacks were becoming more coordinated, more vicious. The humans weren't just trying to disable his fleet anymore. They were trying to send a message. "Commander," his communications officer shouted. "We're receiving a transmission from Earth. It's on all frequencies." General Chen appeared on their screen, her face calm but her eyes burning with determination. "Commander Zarthok," she began, "we've seen your logs. We know what you've done to other worlds. We were willing to just defend ourselves, but now we're going to end you. Not just this fleet, your entire hegemony." "You came to the wrong planet. You dare threaten the Craxian hegemony?" Zarthok laughed. "You barely have spaceflight." "We didn't. 24 hours ago we didn't, but you made a mistake, Commander. You gave us time. You gave us a reason. And worst of all, you made us angry. Do you know what humans do when we're angry? What? We get creative. And we hold grudges." The transmission ended, and immediately Earth's assault intensified tenfold. The moon bases had been busy. They hadn't just been launching rocks, they had been building something. A massive railgun, cobbled together from mining equipment and held together by hope and duct tape. It fired its first shot. A telephone pole made of compressed smartphones, each one broadcasting the technical specifications of Craxian technology to anyone who would listen. The pole punched through 3 ships before finally stopping. But its real purpose was complete. Humanity now had detailed scans of Craxian technology from the inside. Within minutes, Earth's factories were adapting. They weren't just making weapons to fight the current fleet. They were preparing for war against the entire hegemony. The International Space Station revealed its final modification. The entire station could separate into 12 independent weapons platforms. Captain Roberts and his crew split up, each taking control of a section. "Remember," Roberts told his crew, "we're not just fighting for Earth. We're fighting for every world these bastards have hurt." The station sections spread out, surrounding the alien fleet. Each one began broadcasting something different. One played every song ever written about freedom. Another transmitted the dreams and hopes of children from conquered worlds, extracted from the Craxian databases. A third simply showed images of Earth, its beauty, its diversity, its stubborn refusal to give up. The psychological warfare was devastating. Craxian soldiers, who had been taught that conquered species were inferior, were seeing evidence of rich cultures, beautiful art, and destroyed civilizations that had been just as valuable as their own. Some of them began to question. And in a telepathic species, doubt spreads quickly. But humanity's real masterstroke was yet to come. In Antarctica, scientists had completed their most ambitious project. Using principles they had learned from analyzing Craxian technology, they had built humanity's first faster-than-light transmitter. It was crude, unstable, and would probably explode after one use. But it would work. "This is Earth calling all enslaved worlds," the message began, transmitted in every language in the Craxian database. "We are humans. We are fighting the Craxian hegemony. We are winning. You are not alone. Rise up, fight back. The hegemony can be beaten. We're proving it right now." The message included technical specifications for every weapon humanity had invented in the last 24 hours. Microwave frequency attacks, probability distortions, weaponized memes, everything. Commander Zarthok watched his tactical display in horror as confirmations came in from across the galaxy. Slave revolts on 17 worlds. Industrial sabotage on 40 more. 3 sector fleets reporting widespread desertion. "This is impossible," he whispered. They're just one primitive world. Sir, Veltok said, reading the reports, the humans didn't just share weapon designs. They shared something called memes and motivational posters. Apparently, a picture of a small earth feline hanging from a tree branch with the words, "Hang in there," has started a revolution on Kepler 442b. The battle around Earth continued to escalate. Humans had moved beyond unconventional warfare into something that could only be described as aggressively helpful chaos. Medical ships approached damaged Craxian vessels, offering aid to wounded soldiers while simultaneously injecting their computers with viruses disguised as medical data. The viruses didn't damage systems. They just made every display show motivational messages about freedom and self-determination. Food delivery drones were dropping care packages on Craxian ships. The food was actually quite good, but each package included pamphlets about workers' rights and union organization. Several Craxian crews were now on strike, demanding better working conditions and hazard pay for invasion duty. The emus from Australia had somehow been equipped with tiny cameras and were providing real-time intelligence, while also being absolutely terrifying to Craxian ground forces who had never encountered birds that aggressive. A group of elderly grandmothers had organized what they called aggressive hospitality. They were boarding Craxian ships with fresh cookies and disapproving looks, somehow making hardened warriors feel guilty about invading. One squad of Craxian soldiers surrendered just to get the grandmother to stop telling them how disappointed she was in their life choices. The Bastrop Protocol had evolved into something called the full concert experience. Earth was broadcasting a continuous mix of every genre of music simultaneously. Classical, death metal, jazz, K-pop, throat singing, and experimental electronic music all at once. The Craxians' brains couldn't process it. Several ships had simply shut down all external sensors to make it stop. But the decisive blow came from an unexpected source. Earth's philosophers and lawyers had been working together. They had found a loophole in Craxian law. Commander Zarthok, General Chen called again. According to your own laws, specifically Statute 7749B of the Hegemony Expansion Code, a species that successfully resists initial conquest and causes more than 40% fleet casualties is automatically granted sovereign status and alliance rights. That's for civilized species, Zarthok protested. The law doesn't specify, it just says species. And according to our calculations, your fleet is at 38% casualties. Would you like to surrender now, or should we make it 40? Before he could answer, the humans launched their final assault. Everything they had learned, everything they had built, everything they had imagined, it all came together in one coordinated strike. The mirror arrays in the deserts focused on single points on each ship, creating heat spots that didn't damage but did spell out words visible from space. Go home in letters a kilometer high. Every submarine on Earth launched simultaneously. Not weapons but time capsules, thousands of them, containing the history, art, and culture of Earth. They attached to Craxian hulls and began broadcasting their contents directly into the ships. The crews were forced to experience human history. All of it. The good, the bad, the weird, and the inexplicable. The factories revealed what they had been building. Copies of Craxian technology, but improved with human modifications. Shields that worked on spite. Weapons powered by determination. Engines that ran on pure stubbornness. Sir, the science officer reported, his voice defeated. They've reverse-engineered our technology and somehow made it better? Not better, Veltok corrected, looking at the readings. Angrier. They've made our technology angry. The tipping point came when a single human, a janitor named Bob from Nebraska, managed to board the flagship with nothing but a mop and bucket. How he got there, nobody knew. Why he was mopping the bridge during a battle was even more mysterious. But his presence, calming, humming a tune while cleaning around the feet of confused alien officers, somehow perfectly encapsulated humanity's response to the invasion. They weren't just fighting, they were living. They were continuing their daily lives while simultaneously defeating an alien armada. Commander Zarthok looked at his tactical display. 41% of his fleet was disabled or destroyed. According to their own laws, humanity had won. But more than that, they had sparked something across the galaxy. Reports were flooding in of rebellions,